everybody, this is the Brewery Underground Podcast. Once again, we are back, Steve Sullivan, along with Scott Touron, and make sure you follow us all the time. It's Sullivan Touron, breweryadventures.com, and also on Spotify. Hey, Scott, I know you're here because I can see you on my computer screen here.
I am here, and to peel back the curtain, this is our second podcast of the night.
We are, that's right. We're recording. We're recording a lot.
That's right. We got two back-to-back that we're doing, and it's the first time we've actually ever done this, which is kind of cool.
I know it. We've never done it before, but on this particular podcast, we're going to have some fun because, believe it or not, we've reached about the middle of the year, and we thought, you know what? Let's rate the breweries that we have visited so far, maybe like the new ones we visited or the ones we like the most. And also, we're going to talk about some of the top beers that we've had so far in 2024.
Yeah, this is just going to be fun. I like it. We're kind of halfway through and gives us a little checks and balance kind of thing. So we're excited to announce that Steve is going on tour this summer. We're calling it the Summer of Seltzer.
I'm going on tour.
He's going on
Get your tickets, everybody. It's going to be a fun ride.
We're calling it the Summer of Seltzer and Cider Tour. There's a lot of S's and C's in there. Steve, why don't you explain what the Summer of Seltzer and Cider Tour means to you?
I'm not even sure what I know it means to me, but I'll try to get this out. No. So we've had a lot of different brewery owners on the podcast the past couple of months. And one of the things that they keep saying is how much not only has craft beer changed, but the way that they do things has changed because there's a bigger demand now. I don't want to have a bigger demand, but there's a demand when other people are coming to their breweries for seltzers and ciders. And I can't really say I've had that many seltzers and ciders over the years, but you know what? I told you in a conversation recently, man, I'm going to take one for the team, and we're going to do a podcast later in the year talking about my experience drinking some seltzers and ciders. I don't know if it'll be an entire podcast, but it'll be something probably in the fall that we talk about. So basically, how it all began with the seltzers for me was when we were at Bad Tom Smith Brewing recently in Cincinnati. I had a seltzer there, and I'm not going to rate it here. I'm not going to talk about it here, but that's where it started. And I'm gonna start drinking some others throughout the summer as well. I think that we also may be doing one with our friends from Crazy Gnome in an upcoming podcast. So that should be fun.
That should be fun. And that whole episode will be on cider, I think, for the most part.
It might be. Yeah, it's gonna be. It's gonna be. Mm-hmm. So I think every once in a while we've talked about this. You know, we're usually gonna focus on craft beer, but I just thought, hey, why not? I can be an investigative reporter every once in a while, so I can get out there and do some of the seltzers and the ciders and see what the big craze is.
You don't know what you're going to discover at this point, so could be good, could be bad, could be something in the middle.
Yep.
You might learn something from it.
I may, absolutely. But here's what I'm going to learn right now. So as we do every podcast, we are going to kick off. We're going to open up a beer and rate this beer. So you know what? I'm kicking off a beer right here. And this is one that we got from our friends up in Cleveland that I got from Elizabeth from Pedalbound Brews. And this is the Hoppin' Frog. It is the Smashing Pecan Blonde. Ooh. And man, I am looking forward to this one.
Yeah, Hoppin' Frog does a lot of good stuff.
I have a feeling it's going to taste a little bit different from the pickle beer I had on our brewery podcast that we did talking about everywhere we went in Cincinnati. So may or may not be as good. You never know. How can you beat a pickle beer, right?
How do you follow a pickle beer? I hope your palate got cleansed.
Just a little bit. Add a little water. Yeah. All right. So what you got, my friend?
All right. It's called Bam Bam Rubble Rubble. It's from WeldWorks. I've actually been there in Greeley, Colorado. I'm going to read the ingredients to you. With rainbow sherbet, fruity rice cereal, vanilla, raspberry, orange, lemon syrup, marshmallow, and milk sugar. We have a
Wow.
friend that would love this, Michael Stokes, and we have a
Yes.
friend that would completely despise this, Chris Finnan. So
I can hear them yelling at each other right now.
it's got more than 4 fruits in it. Anyway, I'm going to open this up. And I got this from Keith and Elizabeth as well in our beer draft that we just did.
All
So
right.
cheers.
Yeah, the beer draft. Yeah, cheers to you and this smashing pecan blonde. I'll tell you what, I'm liking it so far. We have reached sort of the middle of the year here and talking about some of our, at least for me, some of the new breweries that I've been to so far this year. And not necessarily in this particular order are the ones that I'm like, okay, this is my number one, number two, or anything like that. But I'm going to start with a Barrique because I had not been to Barrique. It's in East Nashville. We had gone there back in February on a very, 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 very cold Saturday. I believe it was on a Saturday. It was one of the coldest days that Nashville has seen in quite some time. I think the day that you and I went,
Mm-hmm.
it was probably about 12 degrees outside. And I remember you saying, well, it's going to be cold on the inside. Explain why it's cold in the inside at Barrique.
They don't heat or cool the inside of the building. It's a giant kind of warehouse and it's very high ceilings. And they just told me it'd be wasted kind of. And then they barrel age a lot of stuff too. So that might have something to do with the natural temperatures.
Yeah, so I just remember the day we went in there. I said it seems like we are actually sitting outside at a football game. And I'm not even so sure I was dressed warm enough that day, but I did enjoy Barrique, and I
Mm-hmm.
think probably this summer we're going to get back there again because you've been a few times, and for people that have not been there, really explain what makes Barrique so unique.
They're sour. They do a lot of, when I say barrel aged, like wine barrel aged type sours, real high end stuff. They've got a slow pour system in there as well, which is really cool. We just talked about it in the last podcast. Everything's top notch. They do other things too. They'll do some lagers and they'll do some IPAs and stuff, and you can find them in cans. But if you find them in the bottles out and about, that's the real high end stuff. Those are those, again, wine barrel aged type sours, and they're really really good. Kind of like a dry kind of sour versus
Yeah,
some of the fruited stuff. Complete opposite of those.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't, and it's so funny because I don't really even know how many breweries are like that. I mean, it's really different. I mean, have you ever seen a another brewery around that has kind of the setup that they do?
Not like that. No. I mean, it's very specialized. And the brewery that was in there before was a Little Harpeth in the same building. Big, giant open space. It's a big space. If you go in there now, it's loaded to the gills with barrels. I don't forget how many hundreds of barrels in there because everything they do is barrel aged. So it's one of a kind as far as I know. It's certainly around here.
Yeah, definitely. Well, on my list too, and I was glad that we went down there because this isn't in the Nashville area necessarily. You have to drive, depending on where you live. If you live in Nashville, you have to drive really south to get here, and if you live in other parts of Tennessee, you might have to drive north or whatever. But Common John, talk about
Hmm.
Common John. You had been there once or twice, and a group of us went to Common John a few months ago, and man, what a great place.
It is. You have to be going there to get there. It's in Manchester, Tennessee, and we went there because we had left Uncle Nearest and kind of did a day. Although this was kind of further out, but it's literally out in the middle of nowhere. You keep going and you keep going, and you think you're going to John's house because it's so rural out
Right?
there, and then and then you get there, and this nice big brewery opens up, and they got a beautiful outside area. Inside's cool. Just the beer is really good. They do a lot. I know a lot of people who are beer connoisseurs in this town will drive out that far to go there because it's that good.
I believe
Um,
it. Yeah.
hmm a lot of their own stuff. They do a lot of guest stuff too. You can buy a lot of guest cans in there too. I've seen a lot of grist in their coolers. They do food. I think they open up pretty early too because I think they do food and they do breakfast and things too. So
Yeah.
it's really unique. It's the only thing out there. I mean, there's nothing else out there
Well,
as
we
far as.
had Kendall Joseph on a recent podcast when he was rating because he had gone we did a podcast with him on rating all the breweries across Tennessee, and he had talked about this particular one and how special it is. And he said, if you try to go there on a Friday night, it is packed. I mean, and
Yeah.
I believe it too, because really, I don't know how close there are any other breweries. You know, you get down into the Manchester area, you probably almost have to keep going to Chattanooga
Yeah.
to hit other breweries in that whole area.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I haven't been down there at night because it is so far away. It'd be killer to come all the way back. But we have been there when they've played some live music out on the patio during the day.
Yeah.
So I think the nightlife down there's probably better than the daytime, just because the locals kind of probably hang out there. But it's a great spot out there. If you ever get out that way, just make it a point to go out that way.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I look forward to getting out there again. You know, one of these days. It may have to be like a road trip taken down to Chattanooga, and then on the way down or on the way
Hmm.
back, and maybe going to Common John. Because I think the day I went there with you and there were a group of others. I think we were maybe there for like an hour or so, and that just seems like a place where you need to go and hang out for a couple of hours. And they have a whole big area outside you can sit, and it's really, really, I think, a great place.
Yeah, if we had timed it differently and gone there first, nearest would have been closer. We'd have been coming back in versus going out after we had gone to nearest and then coming all the way back to Nashville, but still worth the trip.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Another brewery that I made it to this year was Living Waters, and that's over in the East Nashville area. In fact, you know, we always talk about the beer community, and we talked about that on our last podcast, how big the beer community has become. Keith and Coop, who follow us on our podcast, and they live in Delaware, they were coming through Nashville, and they wanted to meet us for the first time, and we ended up meeting up with them and having a couple of beers at Living Waters. And I didn't know that much about Living Waters, and it's in a small building where they serve basically they serve craft beer, and but they also serve coffee as well. But it seems like they have a lot of different varieties of craft beer there. And I know the night we went, it was pretty crowded. It's been a few months ago, and I may have only had one or two beers that night, but really enjoyed Living Waters, and I can't wait to get back there one of these days.
Yeah, the coffee is a very East Nashville thing, right? So the coffee
Yeah.
and the beer together is very East
Oh yeah.
Nashville. It's right next to Grimey's record store, which is very East Nashville, having a record store. Yeah, meeting those guys there was cool. Remember Keith from What's Brewing Next out of Knoxville? We met him too.
Yeah.
He was there. He was in town.
Yeah, definitely.
They do a lot of styles. You're right. I mean, anything from lagers to stouts on the board. I can find them a lot out in the wild. Liquor stores and stuff have them, but when you go in there, you're going to find some things you can't find anywhere else too. Just a really cool vibe. I mean, I've been in there drinking beer, and there's a guy next to you drinking coffee and his laptop going. You know, it's just a really, but it blends well, and the beer is really, really good. Maybe a little underappreciated in Nashville, unless you're just in the know, I think.
Absolutely. Well, another brewery that I went to earlier this year, and we had them on the podcast, and I got to tell you, if there is a brewery that I would have to say in Nashville that I think if I was to take every brewery in Nashville that I liked, and if somebody said to me, "Okay, can you give me five different ones to go to?" and I'd say, "All right, how far do you want to travel?" Now
Hmm.
this one isn't. You don't have to travel that far, but it's not in necessarily the downtown area. It's in a suburb called Donaldson, Tennessee. Tenfold Brewing is definitely on my list because when I went out there, and I've said this before, and I said this when we had the guys on the podcast, the beer is good. The food, I mean, they rock the food. Unlike a lot of breweries, I mean, they really get a lot of creativity for it. But the beer is really fantastic, and it's really just a great building. I mean, you go in there, and it's very, very large, and they've got TVs in there to watch sporting events, and got a patio out in the back and things like that. So to me, Tenfold Brewing, I don't know if it's necessarily a hidden gem of breweries in Nashville. I don't know if I would call it that necessarily, but to call it a gem of breweries in Nashville, I would. I mean, I
Hmm.
really like it that much.
They do. They stand out a little bit with the food pairings, like you talked about. I was actually there for lunch this week, Shame I
Oh,
couldn't have any.
wow.
I know I couldn't have any beer, but I did see Chad in there. I went and spoke to him for a minute. But even on the menus, and I guess it's the first time I've noticed it. Whatever the food is, they actually have the pairings or the best pairings for beer next to the food on the menu.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool, and we had talked about that. So they're one of the few that I think really do that here in town.
Yeah, it was really cool when we had him on the podcast because I was talking to him about, okay, can you rate like what food, when I came out there and I got a flight and they were just rocking that. They're like, oh yeah, you
Hmm.
would want to, this is this and this is that and the food pairings, and that's not something that you really hear too much about at breweries, and I think that that's something that they really have got the mark on. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's not just food, right? It's not, some places have food and it's just,
yeah.
whatever, but they have, I mean, it's really kind of, I would say really high end, not expensive, but high end type food that pairs well nicely with beer. So, like I said, I went for lunch. You can go there just for food as well. It's that good.
Yeah. So another new brewery that I went to this year, and actually, I think I'm not even sure they were open last year because it's pretty new. Was Middle Ground, and they're in Murfreesboro, and they're one of the newer breweries there. And I remember we went in there, and it's like just in a little shopping complex. I didn't even expect it to be as big inside as it was, but I remember going in there and having a couple of beers and thinking, I really love to see smaller places get off the ground, middle ground. So pardon the pun there, but uh, so middle ground would be another place that I would highly recommend. And I think that the great thing is about that portion and that part of Murfreesboro is there's so many different breweries that are opening now. And so if you're there, go to middle ground, check them out because I think that you'll like them and the beer is really good.
Yeah, it's another, not another reason, but if you make that Murfreesboro trek like we do, it's another place to go to. You can fill a day out there now
Yeah,
between all the
definitely.
breweries.
Definitely. Well, another brewery that we had just gotten to, and we talked about this on our last podcast when we discussed our Cincinnati trip. Neither one of us had ever been to Urban Artifact in Cincinnati. And I had had a few of their beers over time that I had tried and bought in cans up there, but never had gone to Urban Artifact. And if you want to go back and listen to our other podcast on our Cincinnati trip, we talked about that a little more in depth. Of like it's in a church and they do a lot of sours. But I was very glad that we finally got the Urban Artifact and knocked them off the list. So that certainly stands out as another one of my top breweries so far in 2024.
Yeah, it was neat. I'm glad we finally got there. I'm like you. I've had a bunch of them in cans. We could find them in Nashville, at least when Craft Brewed was open. A little harder to find now, but always good, funky stuff. Of the sours, everything. There's no telling what you'd get, but you'd have them because they're really good. So we got there. If you listen to the podcast, the previous one to this one, we actually talk about them as part of our brewery travels that we just
We
did.
another one that so I'd been here a long time ago, but when it's in a different location, and I hadn't been back for a while. So I'm just marking this as a new brewery as far as location this year. Blackstone and Nashville Brewing. We had Scott Murdy from Nashville Brewing on the podcast a while back. We'd actually met him on St. Patrick's Day inside Blackstone, and wow. I mean, what can you say about this
Hmm.
entire experience? I mean, if you want to go someplace that does really really good beers, and you're not going to get a whole lot of you know we just talked about Urban Artifact and the sours. That's not what you're going to get from Blackstone and Nashville Brewing. I mean, you're really going to get the nitty gritty of what beer really is supposed to be like.
The Nashville Brewing Company part is going to be your German lagers, and I've mentioned this a few times before. Newfound appreciation for those things, man, and the way they do them over there. I mean, they use ingredients they get from Germany. Like it's they're brewed to those recipes. I love them. I love all the lagers that they're making. And the Blackstone part, always been a fan of those guys. The pumpkins. Like you said, they kind of do some traditional stuff. The porter's always good, but everything's solid. It's always really good beer.
Yeah.
We got a nice tour of the brewery, which was fully automated, which is really cool. And the tap room's really nice in there too. So oldest brewery in Nashville, and I won't say underappreciated, but maybe a little under the radar sometimes.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but for me, always one of the big hitters here in town, and it's always been one of my favorites.
Definitely be going back there time and time again. So a couple of the other ones that new breweries that went to this year, and again we had talked about these on our trip to Cincinnati, and I'll put them all together. Streetside Brewing and Mount Carmel Brewing are all near each other, and we had knocked them off the list. And you can go back to our last podcast and kind of listen to our reviews on them, but Streetside is one that I heard from several people when I was up there over the last couple of years of like, you got to get the street side, you got to get the street side. And so we went over there, and then we also went to Mount Carmel, and both had, great beer. And I think the interesting thing that I always like is Streetside Brewery was really set up like you literally would go into a building like right off the street, like an older building, and just walk into
Yeah,
a brewery. And Mount Carmel was totally different because that was out in a bit of a more rural area. But there's a big pond out back where you can sit out, in chairs and stuff like that, and enjoy the night or enjoy the day, and then you can go in and they've got food inside and enjoy the food and enjoy the beer in the brewery. So two different styles of breweries, but man, both of them were really fantastic.
yeah. Mount Carmel kind of had more of a campus kind of feel with the outside area and the
Yeah.
pond, and heck, you get a beer from the bar and just go sit out there and look at the ducks or whatever. And that was, you know, and that's fine and that's good. And like you said, we went in and we had some food and which was really good too, and had some more beer and it was busy. So that tells you, I think it's a very popular place. And yeah, street side too, like you said, it does have that feel. I didn't think about it, but the name kind of is indicative of kind of the feel. You're kind of sitting out there, kind of near the sidewalk and
hmm
outside, and again, great beer and just a cool place to hang. And we did.
Yeah, we certainly did. And another one that was new this year that I went to again on our Cincinnati trip was we went to Humble Monk, which is right across the street from Urban Artifact. Now, at the time you're listening to this podcast, it was our understanding that Humble Monk, that location over there by Urban Artifacts in Cincinnati, was probably going to be closing, but I think they were going to be opening one nearby. So if you're going up there and you're looking for Humble Monk and you say, hey, I heard Steve talk about on the Brewery Underground podcast about Humble Monk. Where the heck is it? Just check online. I'm sure they'll be making announcements of where they're going to be as well. And then finally, I also want to give a shout out to Black Abbey because I had not been to Black Abbey in years, and we went there a couple of months ago and really enjoyed Black Abbey. I've always enjoyed their beer. We had Carl Meyer, who owns Black Abbey, on our podcast, a few months ago. And really, what another great place and really a unique place is Black Abbey.
Yeah, we did love Carl coming on, and we've talked to many people who have said really good things about him and his knowledge and the beer they make, and the tap room is all great. They've got their own unique style. Look up their story on their website. It's really cool and kind of
Yeah,
where they come from, and the artwork is always really cool. And heck, listen to the podcast because Carl is very knowledgeable. We learned a lot from him.
yeah, we
So
certainly did.
yeah, so
Well,
it just him on was a big deal.
yeah. Well, that's just that checks in some of the breweries that I've been to so far in 2024 that really stood out from me. And you wanted to kind of highlight some of the breweries, like your top 10 list of so far for 2024 as well.
Yeah, and these again are in no particular order. You stole my thunder on a couple of them, but I'm gonna I'm gonna bring them
Hmm.
up anyway. Nashville Brewing and Blackstone was on there. Like you said, Scott Murdy came on. We got a nice tour of the thing. We got to do it remotely in the building, and love the beer, both Nashville Brewing and Blackstone. So want to reiterate that tenfold, just for the reasons we just spoke about. I won't go into that too deep because we just spoke about it, but love tenfold. Black
Can
Abbey is
you
another one.
can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Sure.
So you left out on Blackstone, you left out a particular beer that you had that you really liked?
Well, I've given 4 beers in Untapped a 5-star, and this is one of them. It's the pumpkin ale.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we were in there, St. Patrick's Day, and then we were again shortly after that, and they had it on draft this time of year. And we're in May now, but this was back earlier in the spring. Had it on draft this time, which you don't normally see. So I know you wanted to go back to get that, and you did.
I did. I think I rated it about a 4.25 on Untappd. So I didn't like it maybe as much as you, but I can tell you that for pumpkin ales, I thought it was really, really good. And I always like these pumpkin ales that have kind of that spicy kick. It's not too overpowering. It's not too annoying, but man, it really hits the spot as it goes down. And I would highly recommend their pumpkin ale. I would go out there and get that. Yeah.
It does have a nice balance to it, doesn't it? It's not too much of one thing or another.
Yep.
Yeah. So another one that you had mentioned was Black Abbey. Just spoke about that and Carl, how great he is. Now, I will bring up a little story. The last time you and I were there a couple of weeks ago, we ran into our buddy Kyle. And then from that point on, we went to our buddy Brian's house. And from that point on, you started singing the Star Spangled Banner. This was that same night. So I don't know if it ties in together, but we were at Black Abbey that night. So
I really have no knowledge of me singing the Star Spangled Banner. I don't think that happened. So
don't worry, I've got video. If anybody needs, I've got it. I won't send it out publicly, but
nobody needs to see me singing the Star Spangled Banner. But that is funny though.
We'll go to the highest bidder and just bring, just kind of a patriot, just brings that out.
Right.
All right. Some new ones on here that you hadn't mentioned. And these, for some reason, by my mistake, were not on my previous list, but Rheingeist and Braxton. I'm going to kind of put them together, not at the same brewery, but kind of for the same reasons. Great beer, rooftops. They should be on my list every year. It's hard to get better than that. It's always part of our annual trip one of them we just came from. Just awesome. A little story is I walked behind a guy that we were with walking into Rheingeist, and when the tap room opened up, I just heard him go, "Holy shit," which is something Chris Shields had said that he never gets tired of listening to or hearing when people do that. So 16 Lots, which is Southern Outpost location in Newport, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Made my list. I just came from there. We just came from there. You had been. I had not, and it was the first time, and what you had described before did not do it justice.
And I was glad that everybody that basically followed my lead, except at the end of the night when we were going to the car and nobody was following my lead. Shout out to our friend Brew McCoy, who was driving that night and thought it was in the other parking garage, and where we parked, I had parked about 10 times at least in my life, but I was following. And then finally, when they realized that Steve knew where the heck he was going to go, I took the lead and I got us out of there. So yay me!
Circled around and came back. Yep.
Yeah. No.
Yes. Okay.
No, you know what?
Go ahead, because you could describe it too, because you've been there a couple of times.
Well, and for people that, if you're not familiar with where 16 Lots is, there's a whole place over there. It's called Newport on the Levee, and it's undergone a lot of changes over the years. But it's really a cool place, even to sit out at night, especially when it's warm, and you got the overlook of the Ohio River and everything. And you can walk. There's a bridge right there. You can walk to sporting events. There's a whole lot of things they're always going on over in that area. And you also have, even around the corner from there, you have it's the Hofbrau House, where we've been to as well, over in Newport. And so the whole area over there is just, if you're a craft beer enthusiast and you like good food, I would always say go over there. I went over there. It was in December of last year, and spent one night. I was doing family stuff, but I spent the night in Newport, Kentucky, because I wanted to hit a couple of things over there, including 16 Lots. So It's just great. It's just great over there.
It is, and we mentioned this earlier. We're glad those guys are still with us.
Yeah,
and hopefully they will be for a while. It sounds like they're doing well, and I hope they're there for next time we go too, because you got to recommend this place to anyone and everyone.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, another one that's on my list is, now I went we went in 2023 when they opened up. And I know we said this is the 2024 list, but it's our show and we can do
It's
whatever
our
the hell we
show.
want.
Yeah, that's right. We'll do whatever the heck we want.
That's right. We'll do whatever the hell we want. But it's Half Batch Brewing out of Hendersonville, Tennessee. And they're on this list for many reasons. Their tap room and their brewery is beautiful. They've got a brand new one. We went there opening weekend and packed to the gills, which was great to see. We love the beer. We had Nate on, very knowledgeable guy. We just love it. The whole vibe is cool. They're doing really good things. They had to be on the list, even though that was in 2023. I don't care.
That's okay. It's your
right.
list.
We can do what
you
we want. That's right. Do you remember going there back in the fall?
Half Batch, yeah.
Yeah.
I loved it. I think the day we went, it was like the opening of their new brewery, and it was really, really crowded that day. So
yeah,
I don't think we stayed incredibly long, but I certainly had the appreciation for the fact that here's a brewery that was smaller. Now they've gotten bigger and they're flourishing, and I love to see that kind of thing. And they're a local place, so yeah, it was fantastic to be there, and we'll definitely be back one of these days.
Yeah, and they didn't move far. They're in the same parking lot. They share the same parking lot they were in. They just kind of moved from like a kind of a strip center to their own building now, which is just right down from them. So
yeah,
I had to put them on the list. Love those guys.
Right.
Another one is Crazy Gnome, and we've been many times. It's not a new brewery for us, but we were just there recently for the Beer Babes and Dark Shadow collab release that they had done, which was really great. And we got to meet the Beer Babes and see the Dark Shadow folks who we know, and got to see Grayson again. And then we talked about his cidery and him coming on the podcast, which is coming up pretty soon. So that's going to be fun. I've always liked their beer. I've liked their vibe in the tap room. We've talked to Grayson before. We've met Kramer. We've talked his head off before.
Yeah.
I just like going in that place, and the staff is always friendly and stuff. So they've got to be on my list.
Well, and I also think one other thing that on the last podcast we were talking about. You would ask me a question about the beer community and what it means to me. I know we didn't bring up the folks from the Beer Babes or Dark Shadows, but we have made. I would like to think we have made friends with these folks.
Yeah.
Because they're also part of the beer community, and so we had them on the podcast, but they've also embraced us, just like, hey, keeping in touch back and forth, and so it's been a really fun time to get to know those folks as well.
We have, and we've hung out with Dark Shadow a couple times, just us going and hanging out. They're local to us, and we'll do that again. It's just nice hanging out with those guys, and that's the local scene too. We didn't even talk about that earlier. That's the local beer community.
Yeah, definitely.
Not to mention the stuff that other people that are our town. So.
Yep.
Another one I'm going to put on here is Fela Force. They're here in Nashville. They do Belgian styles. I love everything they do. They've got a good rotation of things, a lot of different styles. They got a cool, eclectic kind of tap room, and their outside area is really big and spacious too. So I've always liked everything they've done.
It's another place I look forward to going back to, because my only time going there was the night after we left Barrique, and we walked in there, and I think every place in Nashville, it didn't matter if a place had heat or not. It was so cold.
Yes,
It was back in February, and it felt like it was 20 below outside. So we went in there. It's like, okay. But yeah.
Like, let's go find a place with heat. And I don't know that anybody had heat.
No. So what?
That it seems.
It definitely wasn't anything against them, but I want to go. I definitely, that's another place on my list I want to get back to.
Yeah, really cool spot, and I always like going. Just a couple more. This one might surprise you a little bit. It's Tailgate, and they're based out of Nashville, and they've got I think 9 locations, counting Chattanooga and the airport. But the reason I like them so much, first of all, they've got a new location, kind of in between you and I, the south location. They've got multiple locations. So if you're in East Nashville, they've got one. We've got one over here. If you're in West Nashville, they got one. If you're in Germantown, Murfreesboro's getting one, right? So they're kind of all over the place. And when I go in there, I can get a new beer and several new beers every time. I mean, they're you could go 3 days in a row and you're going to find something new. They're constantly turning beer over. And, you and I like to drink beer that way.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to get flights, it's new stuff almost every day. So I love that part about them. And I'm part of their mug club now, which which the reason I did that is because you can use the mug club in every location. It's not just one. So if I go to East Nashville, I'm part of it. If I go over here, I'm part of it.
Yeah.
So and you get the discounts and stuff. So that's why I like them, and they're everywhere. We've been many times, and
Yeah.
we may go this weekend possibly. So
We might. You're
we
like
might.
Mr. Mug Club.
I like going in and showing my mug club card. Look at me.
There you go. Got the special. Get in. Yeah.
Just
All right.
slap it down on the counter. Mug club.
Yep.
Oh yeah, we're the mug club guys.
There you go.
Okay. I've got two more. One of them, Panther Creek Brewing in Murfreesboro. We mentioned Murfreesboro Trek. You and I have loved this place from the beginning.
Definitely. Yeah.
Love their
Shout
store.
out to them.
Absolutely. We've talked to them about coming on here, and then we're trying to work that out soon. We were there shortly after they opened, kind of during COVID, and love to see them. I'm sure they had a struggle to get started, but man, I think they get a good showing. The beer's good. Last time we were there, we got treated like royalty. We've sat out back.
And they have a really good story, as you said, about when they opened and the success that they've had, and I think that they get mentioned a lot when people talk about the Murfreesboro area. It's like, hey, what brewery should you go to? And you always hear about Panther. People are always talking about them.
Yeah, and we were talking to the owners when we were there last. Man, those are beer dudes. Man, you just look at they're just beer dudes. They're going to be cool to talk to and awesome and just a great spot. They've got that. We have some live music out there? Didn't you and I go sit out there once and listen to some live music out back? Yeah, so just a cool place. Love those guys. So the last one is going to surprise you a little bit, but it's called Honey Tree Meadery, and they're in Nashville. They're kind of over on the east side. And I went once to say, hey, I want to make sure I got to every single place in Nashville, and they were on my list, and so I could write about them too. And man, I'll tell you, if it's not what you think, it's kind of more wine tasting. They call it honey wine sometimes, 13-14%. But man, I got a flight of stuff over there. The first one they brought out was like warm, like they'd warmed it up for like a winter drink. Yeah. Kind of had some spice to it, and everything else they had was kind of like wine, but it was really damn good. And we've got a really nice inside space, and then out back has got this giant courtyard looking thing out there too, which I've not experienced in the evenings, but just another cool place, man. And I was trying to make sure our list didn't match exactly. Yeah, that's okay. But it was something neat and something I recommend, and kind of like. Well, it's just something new to like, and I was surprised that I liked it, and I would go back there and I would and I've actually recommended it to people since then. So I don't know if you've been to a meadery or not. I have not, and I feel like that is definitely something that has to be on my list. So hopefully, as we have 6 more months in 2024. Hopefully I can get the Honey Tree Meadery. So yeah. Yes. Next time we're over there, maybe we can shoot by for a couple. And if you don't like it, they've got local beers on their menu stuff too. So, but it's just a really cool hang. I enjoyed it. And if I don't like it, I'll just leave and go somewhere else. Well, good deal. Well, that wraps up, I think, just some of the brewery mentions and new breweries that we've been to so far in 2024. And one other thing we want to talk about a little bit about some of the top beers we've had so far this year. So, gosh, as we've hit the middle of the year and it's hard to believe, it's like, all right. So I'm looking at my list, and this was actually, you had gotten this for me because Southern Grist just came out with this again, and I had it last year. And believe it or not, I guess I'm consistent in life, right? Last year, this was one of my number one rated beers, and it still is. Thank you very much. One of our favorite, if not our favorite brewery in Nashville. And this one is the Southern Grist Peanut Butter Strawberry Jelly Hill. It's a sour fruited. And every time I drink it, I'm thinking, man, this thing gets better and better. I haven't gotten up to a 5 on Untappd yet, which would be perfect. But it's a 4.50 that I have rated on Untappd. And I don't say this. I mean, we drink a lot of different varieties of craft beer, right? Yep. And sometimes you get some and you go, okay, I could see me drinking this all day or drinking this on a 6-pack. Some of the ones I go, okay, I could do this one now and maybe do this one again in 2 or 3 weeks from now. I could actually drink this
on a 6-pack during the day.
Yeah.
I don't think it would ever be a situation where it's like, well, I'm going to be drinking it the entire day. But you never know. You never know.
Yeah.
The other one, yeah, the other
Let
one,
me say
and
something real quick about that,
yeah,
though. Is it's not out all the time, so I don't know that
right,
it's a seasonal thing. But when it comes out, it goes away quickly, and then you kind of wait for it to come back, which is what happened. So when it came
yeah,
out again, I went and snatched some up.
yeah. Maybe if we had like a big party and maybe like a keg party, we can get a keg of that. Now that would be interesting. I
Can
don't
you
I don't
imagine?
even know if I could do a whole keg of that, but
Can you
I'd
imagine
still.
a keg of that?
Oh my gosh, that would be fun. The other one that it's so funny because Black Abbey has been in Nashville, a brewery for a long time, and when we did the podcast with Carl Meyer not too long ago, I knew I had to go and get some Black Abbey and drink during the podcast. I had had Black Abbey the Rose, but it was such a long time ago, and it was way before I was rating beer. And I knew I liked it, but I didn't know how much I liked it. So I went out, I bought myself some Black Abbey, and I've had it a few times since then. Black Abbey is a Belgian blonde. I rate it 4.25 on Untapped. I really liked it. That one.
That's a really good one and one of their staples. And I'm glad to see you rate it so high because it's phenomenal. You can find it anywhere around here too, which is
Yeah,
great.
yeah, you really can. So another one, I have to actually give a shout out to your dad. Gordon, he got me a 12 pack, and I know I'd had this a while back, and I know, you had it as well. Is a Fireman's Number 4. It's a blonde golden ale, and I still have several of them still sitting in my refrigerator. But when I've had them, again,
Shit, I'll be
I'm
right
rating
over.
that. Yeah, come on over. Come on over. Yeah, I'm rating that a 4.25 on Untapped. So that's another one I really like.
That is a really good one, and that is one of the 4 5s that I have on tap is that one as well.
All right. Yeah, I know you have. I know you have. You have a deep appreciation for that.
I
So
do.
yeah. So another beer that so far this year I like. We've talked about this on the podcast a few times now. Just had it at Braxton Brewing again when we were in Cincinnati. Is their Grater's Lemon Meringue Pie? Is a collab they do with Grater's ice cream up there. It's a sour, 4.25 on tap for that one. And I think we've talked about that one enough. I think everybody knows by now what we think about that one.
It's still a damn good beer.
It is, it is. And the other one we talked about this a few minutes ago is the Blackstone Pumpkin Ale. I had it for the first time a few months ago. Really love that one. The other one that I like for so many reasons is I had said this. This is Tenfold Brewing in Donaldson, and we had gone out there and had a flight, and then we had purchased some beer, and we had those guys on the podcast. I had this beer. It is called the Station 28. It's a red ale. It's basically a homage and a tribute to the local fire department down the street, the National Fire Department down the street. And it's funny because I got really turned off by red ales for a while for some reason. I just wasn't finding any good ones. And this one is really good. I rated a 4 on Untapped. It was my first time having it, so really like that one. The other one was is Blackthorn from Humble Monk. Rated that, talked about that on the last podcast. I won't go through it too much, but it's an Irish dry stout, Humble Monk up in Cincinnati, and I got that on Tapped and a couple of the other ones that already talked about, but it's worth some mentions. The Sonder Brewing, the Lemon Meringue Pie Sour Ale, also the Misty Dawn, the New England IPA from Rheingeist, and the Ghost of Bad Tom Smith, the White Wheat IPA. All of these we talked a little bit more on our last podcast. If you haven't heard that one yet, and then again the honorable mention. A lot of these just came in under the wire, man, because we got a
Mm-hmm.
lot of good beer
Yeah,
on our
from this trip.
Cincinnati trip. Yeah, on our
Yeah.
Cincinnati trip was the Urban Artifact, the small batch Operation Plowshare, the coffee and donut fruit beer. So a lot of those are rated 4 on Untapped, and I would definitely go back for all of these. So
The
yeah, some really
fact
good
that
beer.
the fact that Urban Artifact got you to drink a beer that had coffee in it, let alone
Ah,
the fact that it had it in the name, I can't imagine you even wanting to drink it and you liked it.
well, and I was amongst friends who encouraged me. I'm not going to say they shamed me or anything like that. It was more like encouraged me, like, why not go get this beer?
Go
And
for it.
yeah, in fact, I think I took a picture of our buddy Armando, Brew McCoy, who had tried it as well. I had handed over to him. There was a picture that I posted on our social media a
Is that
while
the one
back
he was
about that.
drinking? Okay,
I
I didn't
believe
realize that,
so.
that was
Yeah,
it.
I think
Okay.
so. Yeah, I think
Got a
so.
nice kind of a pinkish red color to it, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. No, it was really
Yeah.
good though. So that's sort of I think that kind of wraps up, some of the top beers I've had so far in 2024 and looking forward to see what I get for the rest of the year.
That's a really good list, man. I won't say you're all over the place. You're very diverse in your styles and your breweries.
Sometimes it amazes me how diverse I am with so when people so I actually wanted to say that. I was thinking about that the other day because a lot of times when you go out to a brewery and you're with we've all had this happen. If you're just not sure and you're undecided and somebody says, "What do you like?" I'm going,
Hmm.
"I like beer. I like craft
Yeah,
beer. I
yeah.
like trying different things." I don't know if I necessarily have the style. Now, I will say this, and this is just something that I think as we get into the months of Oktoberfest, I have a feeling because I'm a big Oktoberfest guy that this list will change if I'm doing like a top 10 list at the end of the year of my top 10 beers. Because I have a feeling there's some Oktoberfest out there that are going to be way, way, way at the top of the list. I know Sam Adams will come in pretty high for me. So there you go.
I don't know how you keep it at 10 after, because like who comes off of this list, is part of it too. Like who the hell do you bump? I mean, these
Yeah,
are
we'll
great
do.
beers.
Yeah, we'll do it. We may have to do a larger podcast, or a larger list podcast at the end of the year, talking about that, and not just narrow it down to 10, and
Yeah, you know what?
some honorable mentions in there too.
Maybe do a second half top 10 and then have some kind of like bracket or something
Yeah,
where we kind of this one wins. I don't know, it's something fun. But yeah, I don't know
I
who you
like
bump
it.
off this list. You got a great list there.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let me start with mine, and you're going to see a theme on the brewery throughout this thing. But I've got several, but there's one that kind of keeps popping its head up. So and this is from Untapped in order from the highest rating I've given this year down to not the lowest, but the next 9 in a row. So
Yep.
there's one called Timid Little Tyrant by Burial Beer Company. They're out of Asheville, North Carolina. I gave it a 4.8. It's an Imperial New England IPA, so it's like a double IPA.
Yeah.
4.8. I just love it. This one is the only beer that you and I have on the list. We both have on our list. Peanut butter strawberry jelly hill from Southern Grist.
Let me go back to the Burial real quick. I
Yeah,
did want to say this because I've had I've had Burial beers before, and they are really, really, really a very good brewery. They do a lot of great beers.
they are. My favorite are their New England IPAs, which is probably what they're known for. They do a whole bunch of stuff, and then they do the Imperial stuff too, which is some higher ABV stuff. So yes, what they're doing is, if I had to pick one the rest of my life, it'd be Burial.
Oh wow, okay.
Yep. So at a 4.5, that peanut butter strawberry jelly hill from
Hmm.
Southern Grist, which is the same one you had on your list, and I've had it before, but since it came back out, and it's kind of this year, it made the list. Next one it's called Nimbus by Hopfly Brewing Company. They're out of Charlotte. I gave it a 4.3. It's a New England IPA, and I actually picked it up at Southern Grist. They had some stuff left over from their 8th anniversary birthday party. So
Yeah.
some vendor or some guests that they had in, and were selling some of this. So I picked it up there, and it was phenomenal. You're gonna recognize this brewery. I got one. It's called Rat a Tat
Yeah.
from Bearded Iris. It's a 4.2 and Untapped, and it's an Imperial Stout.
And I'm looking, and I have not had it.
Really?
Yeah, I have
I have
not
to
had it.
I have to see where I got it from. But you know, you kind of made a point earlier. Sometimes you think you don't like something, and you go back and you look at your reviews or your ratings in Untapped, and you realize Shit, I guess I do, because I gave them higher than you think. I don't like this style. Then you realize you got more rated higher than you thought you did.
Right.
So, and I say that because an imperial stout might be one of those things, but that was way up there for me. So the next one is called Chocolate Raspberry Stout, and is by our friends Dark Shadow Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we had it at Brewbies Fest. I think that's where we had that one. I'll have to go back and double check, but gave it a 4.2. It's a milk stout. Not sure if you can tell there. Did you have that there? If that's where it was?
Let's see. I'm looking. Yeah, we had it there.
Did we? Okay.
And I could have put this on my list. This is another one if I had expanded my list. So I'm looking at what I rated it, and I rated it as a 4 on Untapped. And it's a really good beer. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good, and not surprising, but kind of surprising. I was like, wow, 4.2. That's upper echelon for me.
Definitely. Yeah.
My
anything
ratings.
4 and above, in my opinion, it's a really good beer.
Absolutely. So I was pleasantly surprised to see them that high, and of course, we like those guys. So I've got two together for my next one, but I won't say the same thing, but it's called DDH Mixed Greens. It's by Southern Grist, and it's volume 63 and 64. I had the same rating for them, so I just put them both on there. But they're a DDH, it's a double dry hop New England IPA. Great series. Gave it a 4.1. I just put volume 63 and 64 together. Have you had any mixed greens?
I have not had any mixed greens.
So, so for all the fruited sours that Grist does, this is like the complete opposite of the spectrum. New England IPAs, and I really like this series that they do.
All right. Well, something to look forward to.
Yeah, and they'll continue. I don't know how often they come out, but they'll continue to, they'll do a 65 and a 66 or whatever. I don't even know what they're up to now, but you're gonna like this one. And again, pleasantly surprised they were this high on my list. Whole Lots of Cherry Cheesecake Smoothie Sour.
And I am looking on my Untapped because I know I rated that. And hang on.
This is one that they sent to us.
I know. Yep. So I rated this a 4.25.
Wow.
And I actually had it. Hold on a minute. Yeah, when I checked this one in, yeah. So I had this at their location.
Oh wow.
So last year when I went there, November 30th, and I rated it. I remember having it. It was really good at the time, and I posted some pictures about it because this thing. What I remember about this was it was like a dark, obviously cherry cheesecake. It was like a dark red. I couldn't believe that they had gotten the texture like they did and the taste like they did. I was like, how in the world did you do that? And it came out such a great tasting beer. So yeah, that really stood out to me.
Well, and it tasted exactly like the description says, which
it does, yeah.
Gives it credibility to me. It's like, oh, that's exactly what it says. Grist does a lot of that too. It's something. You're like, that's exactly what it says it is.
Yeah, definitely them. That's kind of Southern Grist-esque. Yes.
Yes, it very is. Yep. So 16 lots out of Mason, Ohio. I give it a 4.1. It's a fruited sour. Absolutely delicious. I don't know if they keep that on year round, but if you get a chance to get it, get it.
Yeah. And actually, well, the Mason, Ohio. So Mason, they got 2 locations. I don't know if, I'm assuming they also have that on tap in their Mason location. I got it at the one in Newport, the Southern Outpost on the levee.
Okay. And I think they brew at both locations, don't they? So I don't know if they mix it up. And
yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly, but I'm assuming they do.
Yeah, I think so. So next is one called I'd Like to Say That I Missed You.
Yeah.
Which I just think is a brilliant name. It's not on the list for that, but it's still a brilliant name. Burial Beer Company. So you kind of see a theme here. It's a 4.1, and it's a dark lager, which is not that they don't do those, but maybe not what they're known for specifically. Again, the New England IPAs are my go-to for them, but the fact that they had a dark lager that high was very impressive to me. Another one, because again, and their names are always awesome. I don't know how these meetings work when they come up with these names, but they're fantastic. And when you're checking them in on Tapped and you start typing the name in, there's no other beers named that, so it's the only one that ever comes up anyway. So this one's called The Slaughter of Artistic Expression.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from Burial. It's a 4.1. It's an Imperial New England IPA. And another great beer from them.
All right.
All right. Last one on my list. It seemed to be, it's another burial. That's why I'm laughing.
I see a trend here. I see a trend.
There is a bit of a trend. They always get my highest ratings, but experiential projections derived from transcendental thought is the name of the beer. It's from Burial 4.1. Right. It's an American IPA, so it's not necessarily New England. It's an American IPA, so kind of a traditional IPA for them. So I've got a couple honorable mentions too. The first one is it's called Liberty Risk, and it's from Big Oyster Brewery.
Okay.
And they're out of Delaware. And our friends Keith and Coop sent this to us. This is a collab they did. They are Porch Beers USA, and they collab with the USS Delaware Submarine Association. So their label is on the can. Big Oyster Brewery obviously is on the can. The USS Delaware Submarine Association is on the can. It's a really cool thing. They sent us, they collabed with, and you and I drank it in the car on the way back from Common John.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I remember that.
By the way, when I was looking this up, I don't think you've checked that one in yet. So just for your records.
Well, we were in the car that day, and we were kind of busy. So
we were kind of busy. That's right. Yeah. So I really just got one more. You mentioned Living Waters earlier. They've got a series called Highgate. I think they do different variations. This one's called NCC-1701-0. I do not know what that means.
Okay.
But from Living Waters, it was a New England IPA, and I gave it a 4.1. So just kind of honorable mention. They were still in that same range, with those 4.1s, but I thought they were worth mentioning.
All right. Well, we have some good lists, and we made it to, like we said, about halfway through the year, and we wanted to just share our thoughts on some of the great breweries out there that we like to go to, and some of the great beer that we've had so far this year as well. So I think that is going to do it, my friend. I think that we're going to certainly, at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, we're going to circle back on our list again and highlight a lot of these.
We will. And I want to mention we think of some cool stuff coming up. We've got some guests coming back on. Our next two are going to be guests. Our next two are remotes as well, kind of back to back. So on site, which is going to be cool. I'm not going to mention those just yet, but let those be a little bit of a surprise. And we've got some other things in the work. We're working on dates, and we've got some fun stuff coming too. So I really based out of this trip we just went on too. So we had some new ideas that we're going to hopefully propose and put maybe not a new spin, but put a different spin on some of this stuff.
Definitely. And I also want to give a shout out once again to our friends up in Cleveland, Pedalbound Brews, because this Hoppin' Frog, this smashing Pecan Blonde, man, I'll tell you what, this thing is the bomb. It is a really good beer.
Yes. Also Keith, Crafty Good Beer, and our buddy Armando, who we know well at Brew McCoy, Sir Titan X, guys all over the place. Give them some love.
Give them some love. Sounds good. Well, we will be back again real soon with another episode, folks. But for now, we appreciate everybody tuning in to this episode. And we're going to be back real soon. For Scott Touron, I'm Steve Sullivan, and this has been the Brewery Underground Podcast.
Cheers.